Hello, Namaskar. Welcome to my pod, the CAA Show. CAA, as all of you know, is Conversations and Analysis. My name is Juggi Bhasin. To become a subscriber, all you have to do is to press that red button on your screen. Subscription is, of course, completely free. Would also really appreciate if you could like this video and share this video with your friends. All right. So in Operation Sindoor, we have discussed the role of Pakistan, the crushing military defeat which Pakistan has suffered at the hands of India. All those details are now coming out in the public. We all know about that. But what about the role of China? Why isn't there so much talk, or why isn't there is a lot of discussion on the background role of China? And believe me, there was a huge background role which the Chinese played in the present conflict. We all know about that, the kind of military support they have given to Pakistan in this conflict. We need to talk a little bit more about that. And the questions which I am raising in today's podcasts are that what were the reasons that impelled, that kind of gravitated China to support Pakistan in this manner with the air defense capabilities, with their missiles, drones, etc. Why did they do that? Did after that short intense war of 4 days, did they feel regret? Did they feel that they had made a grievous mistake? Did they feel that it was a bad judgment call which they took in supporting Pakistan? uh, what really is the current standing of Chinese weapon systems in the world? All these issues have cropped up after the hostilities right now are over, but Operation Sindoor, as we all know, still continues. It isn't over as yet. But at least for the timing, these things are over, and now these questions need to be asked. So, what is China? What is really happening vis-a-vis China? I'm going to raise all these questions today. But before I do that in this podcast, remember a couple of things about China, some truisms I would say about China. China is, of course, a great economic power. It's second best to the United States. We all know that. Every child knows that. It fancies itself also as a great military power. But here is this big, big irony. In terms of numerical strength, in terms of quantitative development, they have practically everything. They probably have the largest naval fleet in the world. They have weapons, which all kinds of weapons, right down to all the stealth fighter aircraft and to a very large rocket force, as they say, missile force. They have all these systems. They are very advanced in artificial intelligence and a lot of other things. But the critical thing out here is this, that are these systems, are the Chinese themselves, that is the soldiery of China, are they battle tested? That is the central question we should be asking. It's one thing to have systems where you have dozens and dozens and dozens of aircraft. You have, as you say, hordes of naval vessels, attack vessels, which are going all over the globe. All that is fine. But are these battle tested? Are your systems battle tested? Have they proven their worth, their mettle in warfare? That is the question, and that question probably has been answered in Operation Sindoor. So let's keep this very, very important thing in mind, that the Chinese actually are not battle tested at all. The last battle which the Chinese fought in this, and of course in the last century, was with Vietnam. That was, I think it was in 1979. There was a short, intense war with Vietnam. And if you did not know, then you should know about this, that China lost that war. The Vietnamese actually literally licked China. So the Chinese method has all along been, if you examine it very closely, that they intimidate other countries. They will, like a bully, they will intimidate you with, as I said, with quantitative strength. For instance, the regular things which they do with Taiwan, for instance, they will set up a kind of a state of siege. They will try a naval blockade. They will, dozens and dozens of the aircraft will start hovering over the skies. So they will cut passage of civilian or military aircraft to go into the Taiwanese airspace. They try all these tactics. Even with the Philippines, they would send their attack vessels to corner Philippine boats. But are the Chinese engaging in actual warfare? Are the Chinese pushing their troops and like an imperial army of what the fancy used to be, the imperial army of China? Are they attacking nations? They're not doing that. So the Chinese method is one like that of a bully, intimidation, setting up a state of siege, trying to coerce nation states by use of technology, or they think that they have very advanced technology. These are the Chinese methods which are used. And therefore, what happened really in Operation Sindoor really was that, of course, it was the Pakistanis who were at the forefront in those 2 or 3 days in trying to attack India. But now, every military analyst feels that it was the brain of China which was working from behind. It was China which was impelling Pakistan to do all this. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But before I do that, let me take you back a little bit in time, not in great detail, but let me place before you certain facts which will lend credence to my theory that why the Chinese do what they do, what are the reasons for that, especially vis-a-vis India. And I'll take you back to the year 2019, August 2019. Very significant year in Indian history. That month, if you remember, when the Indian Parliament, when our government revoked Article 370 and, kind of brought in Kashmir completely in the Indian embrace. And that obviously was not liked by Pakistan, but we forget that it was not liked by China also, because China thinks of itself as, another player in the Kashmir scenario. And therefore, what happened in the background, of course, we will never fully know about it, but it is absolutely clear that that Pakistan would have gone running, crying, begging for help from China that do something about India. And the Chinese probably have, and by the way, I have to tell you some very interesting thing about the Chinese philosophy. The Chinese foreign policy, military policy is also based on another truism for them, that we have to teach nation states which are smaller in size or less in economic strength lessons periodically from time to time. Within quotes, lessons. They believe in this thing of schooling nation states or teaching them a lesson. And certainly with India, they are very well aware that India is the only power in Asia which is actually can not only catch up with them, but probably can overtake them one day. And they are very, very clear that periodically they want to teach India a lesson to keep India in its place so that India does not overreach, it does not spread its wings and becomes a huge challenge to China. And therefore, I think that what happened in August 2019 had its ramification in the Galwan clash, which happened, if you remember, next year. It happened in June of 2020 when Chinese and Indian troops clashed. And we all know the results of that. So many of these Chinese troops were killed. And it didn't stop at that. The Chinese not only faced the humiliation of so many of their troops being killed or literally being pushed off the cliff and so many of their troops dying. But after that, India then rushed its troops to the northern frontier and matched the Chinese build up soldier to soldier, armament to armament, tank to tank, artillery piece to artillery piece, fighter jet to fighter jet. That was the kind of deployment which India did, which actually stunned the Chinese. And then not only that, but after the Galwan clash, we occupied these strategic peaks around that entire area, which overlooked Chinese military garrisons. The Chinese just couldn't believe what was really going on. So all that continued, if you remember, and finally, I think it was last year in 2024, October 2024, when the Chinese proposed withdrawal and their troops withdrew from Demchok and Depsan. And in that sense, therefore, that culmination was a kind of a victory for India, where the Chinese actually withdrew and we got our places back, the right of patrolling back. Did that stop the Chinese ever after that to not even try these antics of teaching India a lesson? I'm not too sure. I don't think so. But yes, it did send a message to the Chinese that India was now not a namby-pamby kind of a power which only spoke of things like friendship and all that, but it could show its muscle when the time came, which we did. And therefore, there was a kind of a rude awakening for the Chinese. But then, let's now come to the present. In 2025, things had really started going out of control for the Chinese. We know the backdrop to that. That the Chinese economy, was not doing very, very well. The real estate market had crashed, as you know. Their supply chains were coming under pressure. They were shifting from China to other countries. And then there was a new dispensation, a political dispensation in the United States, which really wanted to, teach China a certain kind of a lesson, or to, to erode their stranglehold over manufacturing. We all know about that. And then, and then the tariff wars which started. When all this was going on and the Chinese economy was weakening, what was China looking for? China, think about it, China at that time was looking for a win. It was looking for a win which would again re-establish its dominant role in the world as a major exporter. Please remember, the entire Chinese economy, the entire Chinese military is based on this export principle. We have the largest armaments, we have the largest naval ships, we have these kind of weapon systems. They have to be exported all over the world. And they were looking for a win. And then uh, there is no official briefing about this, but I'm putting various pieces together. And it appears to me that the Pelgam attack, which happened, was a brutal attack. It was certainly the brainchild of that failed Marshal Munir, whatever you want to call that character. It was certainly his brainchild. But was it on the prodding of China? Now, that is something. Maybe the truth will emerge one day. We don't know. But I have a feeling somewhere the Chinese were probably in the know. And why? Why? If the Chinese were in the know, and why were they prodding Pakistan to take that decision? Because the Chinese knew, and the Pakistan also knew very well, that would be a very, very, this would be an attack which could not go unchallenged. India would rise to the occasion, and India would challenge the attack, and it would hit back. The Chinese probably figured that in their calculations. The Pakistani maybe also probably knew about this. And what are the Chinese hoping to achieve? What they were really hoping to achieve was to see that their weapon systems, which they had given to Pakistan, especially their air defense weapon system, they were like, was so brilliant that the Indians would be all over the place, with the drone attacks and everything, and it would be, the reputation of India would be torn to shreds. Maybe that was the Chinese calculation. And again, why did they resort to this calculation? Because a couple of things were happening before even Pelgam. See, the Chinese, as I said, were coming under pressure because of the tariffs. Now, at that time, the Chinese were feeling a level of vulnerability, and they actually were reaching out to India to offset all the barbs, all the tariff projectiles which are coming in from the United States. And what did they want? They wanted India to open its arm markets more so that there were exports. They could flood their markets, the Indian markets, with their goods and their services and all the things which the China exports. And what did India do? If you remember, India was very, very cool about it. They did not make any definitive statement. They were saying that we will see as it comes. They did not, it did not become a situation where, okay, let's join hands with the Chinese so that we can, put up a front against the Americans. Nothing of that sort was done by the Indian government, even though there were voices within our own country which were saying that this is the time to forge a renewed friendship with China. Join hands with China so that we can put up a united front against the US. There was this talk which was going on at that time, but India did not do that wisely. So it kind of maintained this equidistance that, listen, this is your battle with the US. You please fight it on your own. We have nothing to do with it. We will pursue policies in our national interest, that is India, and it will continue like as before. We are not going to open our markets even more for Chinese goods. That was the uptake, which probably upset the Chinese greatly because they needed India. India is, of course, probably the biggest in a certain sense, the largest population dividend, and in a sense, a very important strategic market in the world. And the Chinese probably needed the Indians at that time. In their calculations, why didn't the Indians reach out? And therefore, it was a time when they thought the time has come to teach India another lesson. As I said, this lesson philosophy of China was at play here. In all probability, then, what I think really happened was that the background planning of the Pelgam attack could have been a joint venture between China and Pakistan. I'm not citing any particular proof out here, but I'm saying this all probability, this is what happened. And then we know the sequence of events. Excuse me. That they launched the Pelgam attack. They knew India would respond, which India did. But India did on its own volition, on its own thinking, on its choosing a time and place of their own reckoning. They responded. And then we know on May 7th, we launched those strikes against all these terrorist camps in Pakistan. And then I think the critical thing which happened on May 7th, between May 7th and May 8th, there were these few hours before the Pakistanis struck back with their drone attacks on 29 locations, I think, in India. But there was a bit of an interval. There were these few hours. Now, if China had to play a constructive role, if China had to play an important role, and believe you me, Field Marshal Munir, for all whatever his talk of whoever he is and all that, if China had told him that, okay, the Indians have hit back, you launched the Pelgam attack, the Indians have hit back at terrorist camps, now leave it here. Leave it here. Don't escalate the situation. It can get out of control. If the Chinese had counseled that to Pakistan, I promise you, this failed Marshal Munir and his men, uh, the Prime Minister, of course, of Pakistan doesn't really matter at all. He is insignificant. He would not have retaliated by launching those drone attacks. The Chinese probably could have counseled restraint, but they did not do that. Why? Because it was their interest that the escalation should happen. They wanted to actually ride piggy bank, and this has been the Chinese strategy all along. They don't directly get into combat. They push others, or they create a state of siege, or they use bullying tactics. So they use the tactic that, okay, we're going to give you all our weapon systems are in place in Pakistan. Now you Pakistanis go and fight it out with India, and let's see the fun what happens. This probably was the Chinese thinking. And then we know that on 8th May, the Pakistanis launched the drone attacks, and then we struck back. And how we struck back in the next 2 days after that, where we literally, bombarded their bases. We destroyed their air defense systems, and all the air defense systems, the much wanted HQ-9 air defense system of China was blown to smithereens by India. In a certain sense, to put it very, very simply, in layman's terms, we blinded Pakistan. Our missiles then were going in wherever we wanted to strike, we were striking at will, literally, because we paralyzed, we destroyed their air defense systems. And then the retaliation of Pakistan with Chinese weaponry. I'm not going to name some of the weaponry which they use, by the way. They use things like the PL-15 air-to-air missile. They use the AR-1 missile. Even their fighter jets, the J-10C fighter jet was an action. The YLC-80 anti-stealth radar at the Chunyan Air Base, all these were destroyed by India. Chinese weapon systems miserably failed, and they failed how? For the entire world to see. Of course, The narrative, as I said, that's a totally different story. The communication outreach, which is the only weak spot which we have, which we couldn't convey it fully. But now even that is being offset because all these details are coming out. The world has no choice but to take notice because please remember the defense analysts in the world, the people who monitor defense matters in the world, they are not just going to go by what CNN is saying or what BBC is saying or France 24 are saying. They are going to go by actual facts, by satellite imagery, what really happened out there. And everybody's in agreement that India scored a decisive victory. Chinese weapon systems failed miserably. And if you needed more proof of that, then the Pakistani foreign minister he rushed to Beijing to meet the Chinese foreign minister, asking for what? For the J-35, the ultimate stealth aircraft, fighter aircraft, with China has. It's not even in operation, and nobody knows if it can fly or it can't fly. But no, we want the J-35. We are getting it in August. Why would you, even and the Chinese did not disagree with that. Now, why would you do that? You would do that only because you know that your other weapon systems have failed, and therefore you want to continue this narrative of intimidation of India. Oh, now we're going to give you the J-35 still, which can, just creep into your defenses and bombard the hell out of you. I mean, that's the thinking behind it, which is so stupid because this is not a time for that. You have made a major mistake vis-a-vis India. Now is the time to sit back, analyze your mistakes, create a bit of a distance from Pakistan. But no, you invited them over, and the Pakistani foreign minister he lands there, and they have this talk of J-35 again, proving that your weapon systems have failed miserably. So the question which I'm the short point which I'm really making out here is that has there been a reflection? Has there been on the part of the Chinese the major mistake they have made? And I've told you their philosophy that they ride piggy bank using the Chinese as proxies to carry the fight, whereas the brain behind is really the Chinese brain. That okay, guys, we're giving you the defense system, now go and fight India. But it hasn't worked. It has, in fact, failed miserably during the short, intense war. Now, is that is that something which the Chinese now regret? Is that something with the Chinese think that they have made a huge mistake? Because there are repercussions for this. What are the repercussions? The repercussions being that even if the Indian government had a bit of an inclination that, okay, let's kind of tie things up with the Chinese, because right now there's a lot of pressure coming, let's say, from the US on regarding on trade, tariff, and other matters. And maybe we need to put up a bit of a, we can open up a little bit more markets for the goods, etc. Now, all that is gone because now the Indian government is absolutely knows what the Chinese have been doing in the background, and therefore, if you think anybody is going to trust China again, you're sadly mistaken. As I keep saying, the lessons of history are very important. And after 1971 war, we all know that the faith in certain Western powers had completely vanished from India, and it's taken decades and decades for India to reestablish faith with certain Western countries. And the same thing applies to the Chinese also. Even if there was some talk, there was some kind of strategic maneuvering, I would say, that okay, maybe for the short time, let's patch up with the Chinese and, to have this kind of a bit of an alliance, and we can, put up a united front in the world in a very fast changing world. All that is gone, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot trust the Chinese. It's absolutely very, very clear. It will be like daggers drawn. They know it. We know it. And even as I'm speaking, it's absolutely very clear the Indian Defense Forces are working literally overtime, both in defensive and offensive matters, to beef up security all over, to sharpen their offensive capabilities, both vis-a-vis Pakistan and China. Because the trust factor in China is completely gone. Look, we never trusted the Pakistanis in the first place. That is absolutely clear. They have always been an enemy country. But if there were any illusions, if there were any delusions of China, well, they're all gone. It is in the same bracket, the same groove, in the same hole which we place Pakistan. There's no difference. So, yes, we might not provoke a conflict with China. It's not in our interest, certainly, but we know how to defend ourselves from them. Their only advantage is numbers, numbers, and numbers, both in terms of armaments and economic superiority. We know that. But then now those counters, these answers are there with the Indian. Because what Operation Sindoor really has done is that it has bolstered the confidence of India like nothing before. It has shown us the capabilities, the technological edge which we have over our rivals, including the Chinese. It has shown us that. It has shown us our offensive capabilities. But above all, it has shown to every Indian that India today now has an appetite for not taking any more nonsense and giving it back. That appetite is rapacious. It is now there. Everyone can see that we are hungry. That guys, you mess with us, we're going to hit you back. That's the new India we are talking about. That's a big change which has happened. And therefore, this entire trust in China is gone forever. And let's see how the situation unfolds in time. It's a dynamic situation. There could be challenges which will be coming even faster than we know. But I think we are in good hands. And the hands of the Indian military is absolutely prepared, both in defensive and in offensive matters. And so, on this note, I come to the end of this podcast. I hope you really liked it. You like the show, do subscribe to it. And on this note, it's goodbye and cheers from my end.